I cannot see that this is going to be decreasing over time.
So I'll take a little different take on this. I definitely think that the threat is out there, and they're very organized, and that they're currently using these dynamic kinds of attacks. I'm particularly worried about malicious code getting into the enterprise, and that's sort of my space. And to me, there's no better way to get into the data center of a big financial organization or an energy company than by trojaning some source code. And I did a paper on this at Black Hat last year, and you can go look at the techniques that I talked about there, but it's really, really easy. It's way easier than setting up a botnet and running a complicated operation that's got IP addresses that can get shut down and so on. I mean, Trojan a library, an open source library like Log4j or something, and you could literally be in most of the Fortune 500 data centers running your code with full privilege in their space. And they're not stupid. I mean, there must be some reason that they're not doing it. Maybe it's because the current approaches are just too easy. But there's a real concern there that it's a risk that we're not defending against really at all. And it's something we need to start doing more research on and trying to prevent, because we're not doing anything on it.
So one more disagreement there, and I don't mean to disagree too much here, but so the reason why it's actually even easier than if I am a state sponsor, I don't actually have to run the botnet per se to do what I need to do. All I need to do is say, hey, botmaster, do you have any bots at these IP ranges of Fortune 500s, of banks or control systems or whatever? Yeah, how about I pay you like 10 grand? And the botnet master's like, for a couple IPs? Sure. I'll give you double that if you want. Okay, great. So now they get all the same stuff with paying next to nothing for getting complete control, guaranteed complete control of whatever companies that they want. We haven't actually guaranteed seen this happen, but we've been told by Black Hats that this is interesting. So.
Okay, great. So we have to have the obligatory cloud question. This is a 2010 panel. So one of the hot topics over the last year has been moving all the applications and services to the cloud. So the buzz may fade away, but we know the concepts are going to remain the same. It's going to be out there. What do you see as the biggest security risks for this type of always connected strategy?
Biggest risk for cloud? I guess at the web layer, all the attacks are the same. I don't care what infrastructure you run it on. It's cross-site scripting is cross-site scripting, SQL injection is SQL injection on whatever site you happen to be on. What I do notice about the cloud infrastructure is that they do actually tend to be more secure than the average website, mostly because they're outsourced, meaning this infrastructure is going to be at least as secure as the most demanding customer, which is going to be much different than, say, the average web bank or the average e-commerce retailer. What organizations are going to lose is control and visibility. If they get hacked, they're not going to go when, why, or even how. That's going to be the number one issue. We're not going to know when we got hacked. The systems are probably going to be more secure, but you're not going to know when it's not.
See, I thought you were going to tell the story about asking Google how many people have access to your webmail. No. So I think that they probably are more secure. What really worries me is that I can't prove it. Because it is a third party, when my customer says, hey, come assess me, I'm like, okay, great, I'll do that. But like, but don't assess this third party. I'm like, well, but that is you. You just took all the risk and you tried to offload it to somebody else and just kind of gave me the no, please don't do that. Attackers don't care. They will attack it they won't even know it's third party necessarily, but they'll just go ahead and attack it anyway. They don't live by these weird arbitrary rules. I would say at least half the assessments we go in on when they said, go have at it, do your worst, except for this one thing over here. And that makes it sure you'll pass compliance, or you'll get the clean bit of health, but that has absolutely nothing to do with your actual security posture.
So my take on this is that moving critical business functions into the cloud and critical data into the cloud changes the risk that the company is accepting, right? They may be trying to offload some of the risk on the cloud provider. So if there's an attack that's successful, now they may point at the cloud. Instead of having to deal with that risk themselves and be responsible for that, they may think they're offloading that risk onto the cloud provider, when in reality, that's legally ambiguous, right? And I think that ambiguity is the problem. Because when we're not clear about who bears the risk, we don't do very well on security. So this may actually end up creating a false sense of security for the people that are writing the code, because they think, oh, the cloud provider's doing that. Like, they're more secure, I think. That nobody really has any idea, because none of this is really visible. So I think really where we ought to try to push here is to get those risks, if we try to move the risk around, we need to be really, really clear about it. And a lot of that comes from, generating visibility into the security. So we need to know publicly about all the cloud infrastructure that our applications that we're using are relying on. We need to know who writes the code, how many people manage that stuff. Are they background checked, or do they have security clearances? There's a ton of things that those providers are never going to disclose, but that's really a problem. That's that hiding I was talking about this morning.
Do they use Log4j?
I'm sure they do. They're probably using a ton of open source stuff to run their enterprise, and we just don't know. And that to me is the problem.
There was an interesting statement about the sort of guess or the assumption that they probably are more secure. I would probably agree with that. But I would say that all it takes is one, sort of vulnerability exploit, one intrusion, and suddenly it's not a single company that's affected. It's everyone who's using that cloud service provider, and that's potentially could be your company. So I think there's huge risk there. And so to follow on to that risk, what's interesting is there's potentially no liability for that risk. What do you get? Let's say you're using a free service even, and all your emails are stolen. What's your recourse? Right? Let's say you're using a paid service and all your data is stolen. What is your recourse? There's potentially no liability on their part. You have no recourse.
That's not necessarily true. There's got to be the agreement that you signed up with the organization, what the legal contract is between you and that organization. So making a vague statement like that is a little.
Okay, but so people might not have all heard that. So he was saying that it depends on the situation and what sort of contracts you signed and so on. So I had a pretty thorough conversation with a very large nonprofit. You've heard of them, they're huge. And they use cloud providers or thinking heavily about moving even more into that space. And they're like, well, what do you think about it? I'm like, well, what happens if you get compromised? They're like, well, we can get our money back. Okay, but what about all the donations that you're not going to get because people are freaked out that their information is going to be out there now? And so it's not just a direct monetization thing. There also could be a gigantic reputation hit because you can't trust that random third party. So there's a lot of non-monetary stuff there. Yeah, no bad press, right?
Well, yeah, free press. Not always free press is good press. But follow up on that, how do we prove the security of these cloud providers? Are they actively being pen tested by anybody that you know of?
I personally don't know of anybody who's doing that pen testing, but I don't really think that that's the right way to generate assurance in the cloud provider. I think you want to get a real assurance case that builds up a bunch of claims and evidence to support those claims about why we should trust the cloud provider to do what they claim they do.
I actually have audited a couple of cloud providers, ASP model stuff, and let's put it this way, I have never audited anything that we haven't broken into.
Well, that's a scary thought, but I guess that's good for your team. To make any real progress in producing more secure applications, we're going to have better developers and testers. So how do you think the state of preparedness of the people coming into this industry? Are the schools, are they doing their job and getting everybody prepared? Or does everybody still have to go through some sort of security awareness and training after they get out of school?
So I think it's absolutely critical that we prepare our students better. I don't think they're getting really very good preparation. Some schools do, but I'm really excited to announce that just yesterday the board approved my proposal to start the OWASP College Chapters program. So let me just take a second and describe this. We want to have an OWASP chapter in every school or university that has a computer science or MIS program. And thank you very much. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a real win for the student that takes on the leadership role within the school So I think we can find these leaders. I think it's a great thing for the students in the program to learn a little bit more about security at a very early age. I think it's great for companies that are hiring these developers. I think it's great for OWASP because we'll broaden our reach and develop our ecosystem a little better. And ultimately, I think this is a real win all the way around. So I'm very excited about this program. I've already talked to a couple of college students here that are really excited to start this at their school, and I'm looking forward to launching this program. So, please look out for it and help me out. Help me grow this thing, because you all know people in college.
I think that's great, by the way. So I guess my answer to that is I think that the level of people these days is a little bit less than it was maybe 5 years ago. And I have only one guess as to why that is, as new people coming on. Because 5+ years ago, for you to get into web security, you really had to build a website. You really had to actually know how stuff worked to be interacting with the web. And now that's not true. For you to have a website, you just kind of go to MySpace and type some stuff in and magically happens. If that reminds you a lot of Angel Fire once in the day, or you remember these things, like we all laugh about that now because it was stupid back then, but why is it cool now, right? It still is a bad idea for teaching someone the fundamentals of how complicated this stuff is. That's the only reason I can come up with, but I've told people at some SANS Institute, they're like, what would you do if you were trying to get somebody on the scene? Build a website, try to defend it, try to get it attacked, suffer an attack, recover from it, really understand how this stuff works. It's the only way you'll ever understand how it works.
So developer education is an important subject, but I don't concern myself with a whole lot of time on that one. So I think it all comes down to motivation in the end. Why is a developer motivated to learn about security? Where's the carrot and the stick? If you're learning to secure code, do you make more money? If you develop vulnerable code, do you get fined or fired? Except in rare cases, neither one of those is true. The part that would push, I think, education forward, and for a developer, somebody writing software, to seek out that knowledge, they have to be motivated personally to do so. And I think that motivation stems from software security liability. I know Jeff disagrees with this in a way, but I do not like EULAs. I do not like the idea that I buy a piece of software and they get to say no warranty, no guarantee, no liability, no matter what they do. I mean, that's just really, really odd. I don't know if that happens anywhere else except a EULA. Right? If we can somehow figure out a way to get out of that zone and maybe add a little bit of liability, something somewhere, now all of a sudden the organization is on the hook for a little bit of liability, and then they have to say, who's writing this code? And can we offset that risk a little bit with education? And then the motivation flows down from there. And then I think you'll see a willingness for everybody to get educated in software security, because then companies will want those skills.
I don't have much to add. I mean, just, back to the question of personal experience, I can't remember a single recent college resume that came across my desk in any recent past where security was ingrained into the development courses themselves. Yeah, I've had some resumes where people have security modules, they learn about crypto and things like that, but not about the secure development lifecycle, about writing secure code. I see very little of that.
So I just wanted to follow on to Jeremiah's point. I think there is, I don't know if there actually has to be like a real carrot and stick in the marketplace for students, because I'm not sure that's really what motivates students to learn certain subjects. At least not for me. I don't know. I was always just into what I thought was cool at the time in college, right? And I think security does have some really cool, interesting aspects to it that are attractive to people, and maybe we can capitalize on some of that.
If I could just cue you on that one. The challenge with security is when we do our jobs right in security, nothing happens, which is what we're paid to do. We're paid to make sure nothing happens. So I would love examples on like the cool part of making nothing happen.
Maybe I'm just weird like that, but I think I really think it's cool to build something that is really well defended, but maybe that's just my builder side. Like I like it, but there's no glory in it. Well, so I think you're exactly right. There's something very cool about learning how to break something and then being able to defend it. And, I really do like breaking things, but, I also like to be able to defend them and understand them that way.